Commander Ji-won stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the message that had just appeared on her screen. The metal walls of the flagship hummed with power around her. Outside the massive windows, stars stretched in all directions like scattered diamonds on black cloth. She read the message 3 times to make sure she understood it correctly. The Galactic Council wanted a war simulation, a test of human military tactics, standard procedure for new species joining the Council, the message said. Nothing to worry about. Ji-won felt her stomach tighten. She looked across the bridge at her crew. They worked at their stations unaware of what was coming. Lieutenant Minho sat at the tactical console, his fingers dancing across the holographic displays. He was good at his job. Too good, maybe. Minho, Ji-won called out. Come here. The young officer stood and walked over. His uniform was crisp and clean, just like regulations demanded. He saluted, then relaxed when Ji-won waved her hand. We have a situation, she said, turning her screen so he could see. The Council wants us to run a war simulation. They're sending observers tomorrow. Minho leaned closer, reading the details. His eyebrows rose. A full tactical analysis? They want to see how we fight? Apparently. Ji-won crossed her arms. 2 species are coming. The Vokhtar and the Lumeni. Do you know anything about them? The Vokhtar are reptilian. Very logical, very precise. The Lumeni are crystalline beings. They think in patterns and light. Minho straightened. Both species are founding members of the Council. Both have never lost a war. Never lost? Ji-won felt a cold smile touch her lips. How many have they fought? Minho checked his datapad. According to the records, in none, no wars at all. They use simulations to prevent conflicts before they start. If one side can prove they would win in simulation, the other side surrenders without fighting. Ji-won stared at him. You're joking. No, Commander. Most Council species work this way. War is considered primitive, wasteful. They run computer models instead. For a long moment, Ji-won said nothing. She thought about the history books she had read as a child, the museums she had visited, the memorials on Earth with names carved into stone. So many names they covered entire walls. Prepare the simulation room, she finally said. And Minho? Pull up our military archives. All of them. The next day, the observers arrived. Ji-won met them in the docking bay with full ceremony. The Vokhtar came first, stepping off their shuttle with careful, measured movements. General Thex was tall, his scales a deep green that caught the light. His eyes were yellow and sharp, missing nothing. Behind him came the Lumeni. Curator Prill floated more than walked, her crystalline body refracting light into rainbow patterns. She had no face that Ji-won could recognize, but somehow she knew the being was watching her. Welcome aboard the horizon's edge, Ji-won said. She didn't bow. Humans didn't bow anymore, not after the Independence Wars. I'm Commander Ji-won. This is Lieutenant Minho, our tactical officer. A pleasure, Thex said. His voice was smooth, almost musical. We appreciate your hospitality. The Council is eager to evaluate human military doctrine. We've prepared our simulation room, Ji-won said. Follow me. She led them through the ship's corridors. Crew members stopped and stared as they passed. It wasn't every day they saw aliens on board. Ji-won kept her pace steady, professional. Behind her, she heard Prill's crystalline body making soft chiming sounds as she moved. The simulation room was large and circular, with holographic projectors covering every surface. In the center stood a round table with control interfaces. Minho was already there, checking the systems. Impressive technology, Thex observed, looking around. Terran engineering has a certain robust quality. We build things to last, Ji-won said. She moved to the table and activated the main display. A star map appeared above them, showing local space. So, you want to see how humans fight? What kind of scenario should we run? Thex pulled out a data device. We have prepared several standard situations. Fleet engagement, planetary defense, resource conflict. You may choose whichever you prefer. Minho stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost casual. Do you want real footage or highlights? The room went silent. Thex's scales rippled in a way that might have been confusion. Prill's light dimmed slightly. I don't understand the question, Thex said slowly. Minho looked at Ji-won. She nodded. He touched the controls and the star map disappeared. In its place came something else. Text, numbers, file directories that stretched on and on. These are our military records, Minho explained. Documented conflicts from human history. We have footage, Tactical data, casualty reports, strategic analysis, all organized by date, location, and type of warfare. He paused. There are approximately 12,000 years of recorded conflicts here. Some estimates put it higher, but we only count the ones with solid evidence. Thex moved closer to the display. His yellow eyes widened. 12,000 years? That's how many conflicts? Millions, Minho said simply. We stopped counting individual battles around the 20th century. There were too many. Prill's light flickered rapidly. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes. Surely this is an error. No species could survive millions of conflicts. We almost didn't, Jiwan said quietly. Several times. She moved to the controls and pulled up a file at random. The hologram showed an ancient battlefield. Men in metal armor charged at each other with swords and spears. Blood splashed across mud. Horses screamed. The sounds were muted but still terrible. The Battle of Hastings, Jiwan said. Year 1066 old calendar. About 7,000 dead in a single day. They fought with bladed weapons and bows. She changed the file. Now the hologram showed trenches. Soldiers huddled in mud while explosions tore the earth apart. Poison gas drifted across the ground like yellow fog. World War I, years 1914 to 1918. Approximately 17 million dead. They used machine guns, artillery, chemical weapons. Another file. Cities burning under nuclear fire. Mushroom clouds rising into the sky. World War II. Years 1939 to 1945. Approximately 85 million dead. We invented atomic weapons during this one. Another file. Space stations exploding in orbit. Ships burning as they fell through atmosphere. The Independence Wars. Years 2197 to 2203. 3 billion dead. We fought ourselves over control of the solar system. Jiwan stopped the display. She turned to face the observers. Both had gone very still. Thex's scales had paled to almost white. Prill's light was barely visible. You asked how humans fight, Jiwan said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. This is how we fight. This is what we know. War isn't a simulation for us. It's not a computer model we run to avoid conflict. It's our history. It's in our blood and our bones and our nightmares. Thex found his voice first. But the why? Why so much violence? How did your species survive? Because we learned, Minho said. He stood beside Jiwan, his young face suddenly looking much older. Every war taught us something. Every death meant something? We studied our mistakes. We remembered our failures. We built monuments to our dead so we would never forget the cost. The council species used simulations to prevent war, Jiwan continued. That's smart. That's civilized. But you've never actually fought one. You don't know what it means when the simulations fail. You don't know what it costs. She pulled up another file. This one showed the current day. Human ships patrolling trade routes, rescue missions, peacekeeping operations, medical aid to colony worlds, we know, she said simply. We know exactly what war costs. That's why we're so good at it, and that's why we're so desperate to avoid it. The silence in the room was heavy. Finally Prill spoke, her voice barely audible. You don't simulate war, she said. You remember it. Every single one, Jiwan confirmed. Thex looked at the data still scrolling on the displays. Thousands of conflicts. Millions of dead. Billions of lives changed forever by violence. I must report this to the council, he said quietly. This changes everything. Jiwan nodded. She had known this moment would come eventually. The moment when the galaxy learned what humanity really was, what they had survived, what they had done to each other. She just hoped they would understand, hoped they would see that humanity had climbed out of the darkness, carrying all their scars but refusing to create more. Outside the windows, the stars continued to shine, cold and distant and uncaring, and on the bridge of the horizon's edge, two alien observers tried to comprehend a species that had perfected the art of war and then chosen peace anyway. General Thex couldn't sleep. The Vokhtar didn't need much sleep anyway, but that night he lay awake in his guest quarters aboard the horizon's edge, thinking about what he had seen. The numbers kept running through his mind. 12,000 years. Millions of conflicts. Billions dead. It was impossible. No species could function like that. No civilization could survive that much violence and still reach the stars. Yet here was humanity. Flying ships, building stations, talking about peace. The next morning, he made his request official. He wanted to see the archives, All of them. Commander Jiwan didn't seem surprised. She simply nodded and made a call. Within an hour, arrangements were made. They would travel to Earth to a place called Geneva Station. The journey took 2 days. Thex spent the time reviewing his notes, trying to make sense of what he had learned. Beside him, Curator Prill remained mostly silent. Her crystalline form still looked dimmer than usual, as if the previous day had drained some of her light. When they arrived at Geneva Station, a young woman met them at the docking port. She wore the uniform of the Terran Archive Service, dark blue with silver markings. Her name tag read Hyan. "Welcome to Geneva Station," Hyan said with a slight bow. "I'm Communications Officer Hyan. I'll be your guide today." "Thank you," Thex replied. He looked around the station. It seemed normal enough. Clean corridors, busy people, nothing threatening. Commander G1 mentioned archives? Yes, the war archives. They're located below the main station. Hyan gestured toward an elevator. "Follow me, please." They descended. The elevator went down and down, level after level. Thex counted 17 levels before they finally stopped. The doors opened onto a massive chamber that took his breath away. It was enormous. The ceiling stretched high above, maybe 50 meters. The walls were lined with storage units, each one glowing with data. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing maps and timelines and statistics. And in the center of it all stood an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes. "This is Scholar Yunji," Hyan introduced. "She's the chief archivist." Yunji stepped forward. She didn't smile, but her expression was kind. "General Thex, Curator Prill, I understand you want to see our records." Thex looked around the chamber again. "How much is here?" "Everything we could save," Yunji said simply. She walked to a control panel and touched it. The holographic displays changed, showing new information. "We have records of 47,000 distinct conflicts. That's our current count. We discover new ones occasionally when we dig up old sites or decode ancient texts." 47,000? Prill's voice was barely a whisper. "How do you organize so much death?" Yunji's expression didn't change. By era, by continent, by casualty count, by technological level, by tactical innovation, by cause, by outcome, by lessons learned. She paused. "We organize it so we can study it, so we can understand what we did wrong, so we can try not to do it again." She moved through the air and holographic files appeared around them. Thex saw names he didn't recognize, dates in various calendar systems, maps of planets and territories. "Here," Yunji said, pulling up a file. "This is how we start. Ancient warfare, stone and bronze weapons, tribal conflicts. These taught us about group tactics and resource management. The hologram showed primitive humans fighting with clubs and rocks. It was brutal and simple. Then iron and steel. Another file, men in armor carrying swords. These taught us about discipline and formation, about supply lines and siege warfare. Then gunpowder, soldiers with muskets standing in lines firing at each other. These taught us about range and firepower, about the importance of industry and manufacturing. Then mechanized warfare, tanks rolling across fields, planes dropping bombs. These taught us about mobility and combined arms, about the horror of total war. Then nuclear weapons, the mushroom cloud again. Thex had seen it yesterday, but it still made his scales tighten. These taught us that we could destroy ourselves completely, that we had to be more careful. Then space warfare, ships burning in orbit, stations exploding. These taught us that war could follow us anywhere, that the stars weren't a safe refuge. Yunji stopped the display. She looked at Thex and Prill directly. "Every single one of these conflicts taught us something. We paid for those lessons in blood. We don't want to waste that payment by forgetting what we learned." Thex moved closer to the displays. He touched one at random and it opened. The file showed a conflict he had never heard of, something called the 30 Years' War. He scanned the details. 8 million dead, entire regions depopulated, famine and disease spreading across a continent. He opened another file. The Mongol Konkians, 40 million dead over multiple campaigns. Entire cities erased from existence. Another. The Taiping Rebellion, 20 million dead in a civil war most people outside Earth had never heard of. Another. The Anlushan Rebellion, 36 million dead. Though some historians disputed the numbers, he kept opening files. Each one showed more death, more destruction, more pain. The numbers blurred together after a while. 10,000 here, 100,000 there, a million, 10 million. each number representing real people who had lived and died in violence. "Stop," Prill said suddenly. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. "Please stop." Thex realized his hands were shaking. He pulled them back from the display. "This is madness," Prill continued. Her light was flickering rapidly now, a sign of extreme distress. "How did you survive? How are you not extinct?" Yunji's expression softened slightly. "We almost were. Several times. We came very close during the nuclear age. A few decisions made differently and we wouldn't be here." "Then why?" Thex demanded. His voice came out harsher than he intended. "Why did you keep fighting? Why didn't you stop?" "Because we didn't know how," Hyun said quietly. She had been standing back, letting Yunji lead, but now she stepped forward. "For most of our history, we didn't have a global civilization. We were tribes and kingdoms and nations all competing for resources, all afraid of each other, all willing to fight to survive. That describes many species in their early development," Thex argued. "But they grow past it. They unify. They learn cooperation. We did eventually," Yunji said. "But it took us longer. We're stubborn. We're territorial. We're afraid. Those traits helped us survive in the wild. But they made peace harder to achieve." She pulled up a new display. This one showed Earth itself, the blue planet spinning slowly in the hologram. Red marks appeared on its surface, each one representing a conflict. There were so many red marks that they almost covered the whole planet. "Every red mark is a place where humans killed other humans," Yunji explained. "Every continent, every climate, every type of terrain. We've fought wars everywhere we've ever lived." Thex stared at the display. The planet looked like it was bleeding. "But look at this," Yunji continued. She changed the timeline, moving it forward. The red marks continued appearing for a while, but then they started to slow. Fewer marks, longer gaps between them. "We're learning. It's taking time, but we're learning." "How many?" Prill asked suddenly. "Total casualties. Across all of history. How many humans have died in war?" Yunji hesitated. She looked at Hyun, who looked away. Finally, Yunji pulled up another file. "We don't know exactly," she admitted. Record-keeping wasn't good in ancient times. Many deaths weren't recorded. Many wars were forgotten. But our best estimate, based on available evidence and statistical models. She let the number appear on the display. 1,400,000,000. The number hung in the air like an accusation. "That's a conservative estimate," Yunji added quietly. "Some scholars think it's higher. Maybe 2 billion. We'll never know for sure." Thex felt something break inside him. His species, the Voktar, had a population of 12 billion across all their worlds. Their total historical casualties from all causes, including accidents and natural disasters, was maybe 8 million. Humanity had lost more people to war than his entire species had lost to everything. "I don't understand," he said. His voice sounded weak even to himself. "How do you live with this knowledge? How do you function knowing what your species has done?" Yunji was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle but firm. "We remember," she said. "We remember every war, every battle, every person we can name. We build monuments. We teach history. We make our children learn about the mistakes we made. We don't hide from it. We don't pretend it didn't happen. We face it and we promise to do better." She walked to a wall and touched it. A section became transparent, showing another room beyond. Inside were physical objects, weapons, uniforms, flags, letters written by soldiers who had died. "These are artifacts," Yunji said. "Real things from real wars. We preserve them. We display them. We let people touch them and see them and understand that war isn't abstract. It's not just numbers on a screen. It's real people dying real deaths for reasons that often seem stupid in hindsight." Heian spoke up again. "My grandfather fought in the independence wars. He survived, but most of his unit didn't. Before he died, he gave me his helmet. It has a hole in it from where a bullet nearly killed him." She touched her chest as if feeling something there. "I keep it in my quarters. I look at it sometimes. It reminds me why I work in communications instead of weapons, why I try to solve problems with words instead of guns." Thex realized something then. These humans weren't proud of the Galactic Council chamber was enormous. It had to be, to hold representatives from 47 different species. The room was circular, with seating arranged in rising tiers that allowed everyone to see the center floor. Each species had their own section, designed for their specific needs. The Vokhtar sat in heated seats. The Lumeni floated in specially lit areas. The insectoid chitter hung from the ceiling in their preferred position. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Deho. He was an older man, maybe 70 years old in Earth years. His hair was silver and his face showed the lines of someone who had spent decades in difficult negotiations. He wore a simple black suit with the Earth emblem on his chest, a blue planet with white clouds. Behind him, displayed on the massive holographic screen, was the report from General Thex and Curator Prill, their findings from the war archives. The numbers and images that had shaken them so deeply. Deho stood calmly as the chamber erupted into chaos. "This is unacceptable." The chitter representative's voice buzzed through the translator. "A species this violent cannot be allowed into the council." "I agree," said the Ethon delegate, its gaseous form swirling with agitation. "Humanity is clearly dangerous. They should be quarantined to their home system." 47,000 conflicts, another voice called out. "How can we trust a species that has fought 47,000 wars?" More voices joined in. The chamber filled with accusations and demands. Some wanted humanity expelled immediately. Others wanted restrictions placed on human ships. A few even suggested military observation posts around Earth to monitor human activity. Deho listened to it all without moving. He had expected this reaction. He had prepared for it. But he also knew that reacting too quickly would make things worse. So he waited. Finally, the council elder called for order. The noise gradually died down. In the silence that followed, a new voice spoke up. It was Curator Prill. "I have a question," she said. Her crystalline form still looked dimmer than usual, but her voice was steady. "Ambassador Deho, why do you remember?" The chamber went quiet. Every eye, every sensor, every awareness in the room focused on the human standing in the center. Deho took a breath. This was the question he had been waiting for, the one that mattered more than all the others. "Because forgetting would dishonor the dead," he said clearly, "and because forgetting would guarantee we make the same mistakes again." He touched a control on his wrist. The holographic display changed. Now it showed images of monuments, walls covered with names, statues of soldiers, museums filled with artifacts. "Every culture on Earth has memorials," Deho continued. "Places where we remember the people who died in wars. We teach our children about these places. We make them understand what happened. We don't glorify it. We don't make war look exciting or fun. We show them the truth. The pain, the loss, the waste." He changed the display again. Now it showed classrooms, teachers talking to students, books and documentaries about historical conflicts. "Every human child learns about war," he said. "They learn about the battles, the strategies, the weapons, but more importantly, they learn about the cost. They see pictures of destroyed cities. They read letters from soldiers who died. They hear stories from survivors. They understand that war isn't a game. It's not something to want. It's something to avoid." A new voice spoke up. It was Representative Cora of the Delphine species, aquatic beings known for their philosophical thinking. "But doesn't teaching children about violence make them more violent?" Cora asked. "Doesn't it normalize warfare?" "No," Deho said firmly. "Teaching them that violence is normal would make them violent. We teach them that violence has consequences, that it causes suffering, that it should be a last resort, not a first choice." He pulled up a new image. It showed a military academy on Earth. Young officers in training. "Every human military officer spends years in training," Deho explained. "They learn tactics and strategy. They learn how to fight. But they also spend months studying military history. They analyze famous battles and disasters. They write papers about what went wrong. They visit battlefields and memorials. By the time they graduate, they understand war better than most civilians. And that makes them better killers." The chitter representative buzzed accusingly. "No," Deho said. "It makes them better at preventing killing. They know when force is necessary and when it isn't. They know how to achieve objectives with minimum casualties. They know how to negotiate from strength without starting conflicts. They know the difference between winning a battle and creating lasting peace." General Thex stood up in his section. The Vokhtar representative had been quiet until now, but everyone turned to look at him. "I have spent the last week reviewing human military history in detail," Thex said. "I have analyzed hundreds of their conflicts, and I have reached a conclusion that surprises me." He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. "Humanity doesn't fight to win wars," he continued. "They fight to end wars. There is a significant difference, murmurs spread through the chamber. Thex continued speaking. Consider their strategies. In most of their modern conflicts, humans try to minimize casualties on both sides. They use precision weapons to hit specific targets while avoiding civilians. They broadcast warnings before attacks. They offer surrender terms. They provide medical care to enemy wounded. These are not the actions of a species that loves violence. These are the actions of a species that understands violence too well and wants it to stop as quickly as possible. Deho nodded gratefully at Thex. The general had given him an opening. General Thex is correct, Deho said. Let me show you our recent history. Our spacefaring history. The display changed again. Now it showed the last 300 years of human expansion into space. Colony ships, trading stations, exploration vessels, and highlighted in green were the conflicts, or rather the lack of them. 300 years, Deho said. 300 years of having the technology to wage war on a galactic scale. 300 years of encountering other species, some of them hostile. 300 years of having reasons to fight, resources to compete for, territory to claim. He let the timeline scroll forward, showing year after year of peaceful expansion. 0 interspecies wars, he said. Not one. Yes, we've fought pirates. Yes, we've defended ourselves when attacked. Yes, we've had to use force occasionally, but we have never, not once, started a war with another species. How do we know you're not just waiting? The Ethan delegate asked. Building strength before striking? Because you can see what we build, Deho replied. He changed the display to show human space stations and facilities. These are our shipyards, our weapons factories, our military installations. We haven't hidden any of them. Council observers have been welcome in our space since we first made contact. You've seen our fleet sizes, our weapon capabilities, our defensive positions. Does any of it suggest we're preparing for conquest? Silence. Everyone knew the answer. Human military forces were substantial, but they were clearly defensive in nature, scattered across human space, focused on protection, not projection. Let me tell you about our diplomatic corps, Deho continued. He pulled up new information. Every human diplomat goes through 5 years of training. They study negotiation techniques, communication styles, cultural differences, conflict resolution, and they also study military history. Why would diplomats study war? Cora asked. Because the best negotiators are the ones who understand what they're preventing, Deho said. Our diplomats know what failure looks like. They know what happens when talks break down. They know the cost of not finding a peaceful solution. That knowledge makes them work harder, try longer, accept compromises that might seem unreasonable to species who've never paid the price of war. He changed the display one more time. Now it showed a long list of successful diplomatic missions. Treaties signed, disputes resolved, crises averted. 127 peacekeeping operations, Deho said. 43 rescue missions for species in distress. 17 border disputes mediated. 62 trade agreements negotiated. 8 species given aid during natural disasters. He let the numbers sink in. We know war, he said quietly. We know it better than anyone in this chamber. We've studied it. We've lived it. We've died from it. We carry the scars of thousands of years of violence, and that's exactly why we work so hard for peace. Because we know what the alternative looks like. We've seen it. We've caused it. And we never want to see it again. Tactical Officer Borum, who had been standing quietly behind Deho, stepped forward. She was younger, maybe 30. She touched her own control panel and the display split into multiple screens. Let me show you something specific, Borum said. These are comparative analyses. Human military responses versus predicted responses from other council species in similar situations. The screens showed various scenarios: pirates attacking a trade convoy, rebels on a colony world, resource disputes in unclaimed space. In each case, Borum continued, humans chose the option with the lowest casualty projection, not the fastest option, not the cheapest option, not the option that would show the most strength, the option that would result in the fewest deaths. Even when it cost us more resources or time or strategic advantage, she pulled. 3 weeks after the council vote, Captain Junho received new orders. He read them twice, then looked out the viewport of his ship at the stars beyond. The orders were clear, but they were also a test. Everyone knew it. The Marauder Syndicate had been a problem for years. They were pirates, criminals who raided trade convoys in the Outer Rim territories. They operated from a massive station hidden in an asteroid field, hitting targets and then disappearing before security forces could respond. Dozens of species had tried to stop them. All had failed. Now it was humanity's turn. Junho commanded 3 destroyers, the Dawn's Light, the Steady Hand, and the Final Word. Good ships. Good crews. Against them was the Marauder Fortress Station, heavily armed and defended by at least 20 smaller ships. The odds weren't terrible, but they weren't great either. A direct assault would cost lives, maybe hundreds of lives on both sides, maybe thousands if things went wrong. Back on Earth, the Council observers were watching. General Thex, Curator Prill, representatives from a dozen other species. They wanted to see how humans actually fought, not simulations, not theory. Real combat, Captain, said Communications Officer Hana from her station. We're approaching the asteroid field. The Marauders will detect us in about 10 minutes. Good, Junho said. He stood up from his command chair and walked to the tactical display. Hana, open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies. All frequencies, sir? Hana looked surprised. The Marauders will hear everything. That's the point, Junho said with a slight smile. Open the channel. Hana touched her controls. A light appeared on Junho's display, indicating the channel was active. This is Captain Junho of the Terran Defense Fleet, he said clearly. We are addressing the Marauder Syndicate. You have committed acts of piracy against Council-protected vessels. You have stolen goods. You have injured and killed innocent people. This ends now. On the bridge of the Dawn's Light, the crew worked silently. They knew what was coming. They had trained for this. You have 6 hours to surrender, Junho continued. Power down your station. Disable your weapons. Prepare to be boarded. If you comply, we will guarantee your safety. You will be arrested and tried according to Council law. No one needs to be hurt. He paused, letting his words sink in. If you do not surrender, we will take your station by force. We will disable your defenses. We will capture your leadership. We will grant asylum to any non-combatants who wish to leave. But make no mistake, we will stop you. The only question is how many people die in the process. Junho closed the channel. He turned to his tactical officer, a young woman named Sora. Display their defenses, he said. Sora brought up a detailed scan of the Marauder station. It appeared on the holographic display, rotating slowly. Weapon placements were marked in red, shield generators in blue, docking bays in green. Weak points in yellow. How did we get this? Hunyo asked, though he already knew the answer. Intelligence team infiltrated them 6 months ago, Sora replied. We have complete station schematics. We know their weapon frequencies, their shield rotations, their supply status, their crew complement, their patrol schedules, everything. Back on Earth in the Council observation room, Thex leaned forward in his seat. Next to him, Curator Prill's light brightened with interest. They've already won, Thex murmured. The Marauders just don't know it yet. On the Marauder station, panic was spreading. Their leader, a Kreth named Vax, stared at the tactical display showing 3 human destroyers approaching. Then he looked at another screen, one that showed a data packet that had just been received. The humans had sent them everything, every scan, every schematic, every piece of intelligence. They weren't hiding their advantage. They were advertising it. They're bluffing, said Vax's second-in-command, a Yulian called Rix. They can't possibly know all this. Then why send it? Vax growled. He scrolled through the data. It was all there. Things that should have been secret. Things that no one outside the station should have known. Weapon placement. Shield frequencies. Even the location of the command center where Vax was standing right now. They want us to know we can't win, Vax said slowly. They want us to surrender without a fight. We have 20 ships, Rix protested. We have the station. We have hostages. They know about the hostages, Vax said, pointing at the screen. Says right here, 17 civilian crew members from various raids, held in Detention Bay 3. They know exactly where our prisoners are. On the Dawn's Light, Junho watched the timer count down. 6 hours. He had given them 6 hours to decide. Captain, said Medical Officer Taeyong from the medical bay. Teams are ready. We've prepared for mass casualties and emergency triage. Good, Junho replied. But with luck, we won't need you. With respect, sir, we always need medical, Taeyong said. Even in surrenders, people get hurt. She was right, of course. Hunyo had seen it before. Someone panicking. Someone trying to be a hero. Someone making a stupid decision in a tense moment. Even peaceful operations could turn violent. Stay ready, he told her. But hope we don't need you. 3 hours passed, then 4. The human ships moved slowly through the asteroid field, making no aggressive moves. They simply positioned themselves around the station, cutting off escape routes. At 5 hours, something changed. One of the Marauder ships broke formation and started moving away from the station. "Sir, we have a runner," Sora reported. Junho checked his display. The ship was small, a scout vessel. Fast but lightly armed. "Hail them," Junho ordered. Hana opened a channel. A face appeared on the screen. "Female, young, terrified. Please don't shoot," the woman said quickly. "My name is Keela. I'm a navigator. I don't want to fight. I just want to go home." "You're not under arrest," Junho told her. "You're free to leave. We're granting asylum to anyone who wants it. Do you need supplies? Medical attention?" Keela looked shocked. "You're letting me go?" "Yes, but we're logging your ship's identification. If you commit any more crimes, we'll come after you." "Understand?" "I understand. Thank you." Keela's ship accelerated away, quickly disappearing into the asteroid field. "That's one," Hana said softly. Over the next hour, 7 more ships left the station. Each one was hailed. Each one was offered the same terms. Go and don't come back. None of them were stopped. On the station, Vax watched his forces melting away. His best navigators, his smartest engineers, anyone with sense was leaving. Only the true believers remained. The ones who thought they could still win. The ones who had nowhere else to go. 45 minutes left, Rick said. "What do we do?" Vax looked at the tactical display again. 3 human destroyers, well-positioned, ready. They knew everything about the station. They had already infiltrated his organization so thoroughly that people had left without him even knowing they wanted to. He thought about fighting, about making the humans pay for their victory, about showing them that the Marauders weren't pushovers, but then he thought about the data packet they had sent. The complete tactical assessment. They hadn't just infiltrated the station. They had mapped it, studied it, probably practiced attacking it dozens of times in simulations. They knew exactly how to beat him, and they were giving him the chance to avoid it. "Open a channel," Vax said finally, to the human captain. Junho's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, professional, not angry or threatening. "Just ready, Captain Junho," Vax said. "I want to negotiate terms." "The terms are simple," Junho replied. "Surrender. No one dies. You get a fair trial. That's the offer. What about my crew? The ones who are still loyal?" "Same terms, surrender, fair trial. If any of them were forced into service, that will be considered. If any of them are wanted for violent crimes, they'll face those charges. But everyone gets a trial. Everyone gets legal representation. Everyone gets treated according to council law." Vax was quiet for a moment. "And if we fight?" Junho's expression didn't change. "Then we disable your station. We'll target your weapons first, then your shields, then your power systems. We'll use precision strikes to minimize casualties, but people will probably die. Your people. Maybe some of mine. Is that what you want?" "No," Vax admitted. "No, it's not." "Then surrender," Junho said. "Do it now. Make the smart choice." On Earth, the council observers watched in silence. This wasn't what they had expected. They had thought they would see human military power. Weapons firing, ships maneuvering, combat. Instead, they were watching a conversation, a negotiation. A criminal choosing to give up rather than fight. "Remarkable," Curator Prill said. "They didn't fire a single shot." "They didn't need to," Thex replied. They had already won. The Marauders knew it. Captain Junho knew it. The only question was whether the Marauders would accept reality or force the issue. On the Dawn's light, Hana reported, "Captain, the station is powering down weapons. Shields dropping. They're broadcasting a surrender signal." Junho let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Acknowledge their surrender. Prepare boarding teams. Medical teams stand by. Sora, keep all weapons trained on the station. If this is a trick, I want to be ready." "Understood, sir," Sora replied. But it wasn't a trick. Over the next 2 hours, human Marines boarded the Marauder station without resistance. Vax and his remaining crew were taken into custody. The 17 hostages were freed and given immediate medical attention. Medical Officer Taeyong and her teams moved through the station, treating injuries and checking everyone's health. The vote was unanimous. All 47 species of the Galactic Council agreed. Humanity would be accepted as a full member, with all rights and responsibilities that came with membership. But that wasn't the surprising part. The surprising part came 3 days later, when the Council made an additional request. Ambassador Daeho sat in his office on Earth, reading the message for the 3rd time. He couldn't quite believe what it said. Finally, he called for his assistant. "Get me Director Sujin," he said. "Tell her it's urgent." 20 minutes later, Director Sujin arrived. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She ran the Terran Military Academy, training the next generation of human officers. "You wanted to see me?" Sujin asked, taking a seat. Daeho turned his screen toward her. "Read this," Sujin read in silence. Her eyebrows rose higher and higher as she went through the document. When she finished, she sat back in her chair. "They want us to teach them," she said. "They want us to train their military officers?" "Not just train," Daeho corrected. "They want to establish a new academy, the Galactic Conflict Resolution Academy, and they want it here on Earth, with human instructors running the programs." Sujin was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know what they're asking?" "They want us to teach them about war. The Council species who have spent centuries avoiding war. They want lessons from the species that fought 47,000 conflicts. They want lessons in how to avoid fighting," Daeho said. "That's different. They've seen what we can do. They've seen the Marauder operation. They've reviewed our history. Now they want to understand how we turned all that violence into knowledge about peace." "And you think this is a good idea?" "I think it's an incredible opportunity," Daeho replied. "For 300 years we've been trying to prove to the galaxy that we're not monsters, that we've learned from our mistakes. This is our chance to help other species learn from our mistakes too, to share the lessons we paid for in blood so that others don't have to pay the same price." Sujin nodded slowly. "I'll need staff, instructors, tactical experts, historians, psychologists, diplomats. This isn't just a military academy. This is something bigger, I know. The Council is offering full support, funding, facilities, whatever we need. They want this to succeed." "Then I accept," Sujin said. "When do we start?" Within 6 months, the academy was operational. It was built on the coast of South Korea, overlooking the ocean. The building was modern but simple, designed to accommodate multiple species with different needs. There were classrooms and simulation rooms, libraries and training facilities, dormitories and medical centers. The first class arrived on a cold morning in October. 200 students from 47 different species. They came on shuttle after shuttle, carrying their belongings and their expectations. Tactical instructor Yuna stood at the entrance, greeting each student as they arrived. She was young for an instructor, only 32, but she had combat experience and a gift for teaching. "Welcome," she said to each new arrival. "Welcome to the academy. Welcome to Earth." The students were nervous. Most of them had never been to Earth before. Some had never met a human in person. They had all heard the stories, the statistics, the history of violence. On the first day, Director Sujin gathered all the students in the main auditorium. She stood on the stage looking out at the diverse crowd. Reptilian Voktar, crystalline lumeni, insectoid chitter, gaseous ethan, dozens of other species all sitting together. "Welcome," Sujin said. Her voice carried through the room without electronic help. "You have come here to learn, to understand human military doctrine, to study our methods and our history. Some of you are excited. Some of you are scared. Some of you think this is a mistake." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You're all right," she continued. "This is exciting. This is scary. And yes, this might be a mistake. We won't know until we try. But I want to tell you something important right now. On your first day, we are not here to teach you how to fight. We're here to teach you why not to." Murmurs spread through the auditorium. Sujin waited for silence before continuing. "The curriculum you will follow is different from what you might expect. Yes, you will study tactics. Yes, you will learn about weapons and strategies. Yes, you will run simulations of combat scenarios. But you will also study negotiation, psychology, cultural communication, ethics, history. You will learn about the cost of war, the price paid by those who fight and those who don't. You will understand that military force is a tool, and like any tool, It should only be used when necessary and appropriate. She gestured to the wall behind her, where a quote was displayed in multiple languages. The purpose of military power is to make its use unnecessary. That's our guiding principle, Sujin said. Remember it. Understand it. Live it. The first month was difficult. The students struggled with concepts that seemed contradictory. How could learning about war help prevent it? How could studying violence lead to peace? Instructor Yuna addressed this in her tactical theory class. She stood in front of a holographic display showing an ancient battlefield. This is the Battle of Gettysburg, she explained, fought in 1863 by Earth's calendar. 3 days of combat, 51,000 casualties. It was one of the bloodiest battles in American history. She zoomed in on specific positions. The Confederate Army attacked up a hill against fortified positions. They knew it would be costly. They did it anyway. Why? A Vaktar student named Kale raised his hand. They believed they could win. Yes, Yuna confirmed. They ran their calculations. They looked at their forces. They made a decision based on what they thought would work. But they made mistakes. They underestimated the defensive advantage. They overestimated their own capabilities. They didn't properly account for the terrain. She changed the display to show the aftermath. Bodies scattered across the field. Wounded soldiers. Destroyed equipment. This is what happens when tactics fail, Yuna said quietly. Real people die. Not simulation numbers. Not abstract casualties. Real soldiers with families and dreams and futures, all gone because of bad decisions. She looked at her students. We study battles like this not to learn how to repeat them. We study them to understand what went wrong, to learn from these mistakes so we don't make them ourselves. Every battle we analyze is a lesson written in blood. Our job is to learn those lessons so that blood wasn't spilled for nothing. The class was silent. A Lumeni student named Prak spoke up, her voice uncertain. But if we learn tactics, won't that make us better at fighting? Won't that lead to more wars? Maybe, Yuna admitted. But consider this, which is more dangerous? A species that knows nothing about war and stumbles into conflicts by accident? Or a species that understands war so well they know exactly why to avoid it? She pulled up new data, statistics about council conflicts over the past 1,000 years. Small wars, border disputes, resource conflicts. Most had been avoided through simulations, but several had happened anyway, usually because one side or both misunderstood the costs involved. Ignorance doesn't prevent war, Yuna said. Knowledge does. Understanding does. When you truly comprehend what war means, what it costs, what it destroys, you work harder to find alternatives. As the months passed, the students began to understand. They studied ancient battles and modern operations. They analyzed successful negotiations and failed diplomacy. They ran simulations that showed them how quickly situations could escalate. One exercise was particularly effective. Instructor Yuna divided the class into 2 groups representing fictional nations with a resource dispute. Each group was given objectives and constraints. They had to negotiate a settlement. The first time they ran the exercise, both groups chose military action. Within the simulation, millions died. The resource they were fighting over was destroyed in the conflict. Both sides lost. Yuna reset the simulation. Try again. But this time, remember what you've learned. The second attempt was better. Both groups tried harder to negotiate. They made compromises. But they still couldn't reach an agreement, and the simulation ended in a smaller conflict with thousands dead. Third attempt. Fourth. Fifth. Each time, the students learned more. They found better ways to communicate. They identified shared interests. They created innovative solutions. On the 7th attempt, they finally succeeded. No conflict. A negotiated settlement that gave both sides most of what they wanted. 0 casualties, the students cheered. Then they looked at Yuna and saw she wasn't celebrating. 7 attempts, she said quietly. In reality, you don't get 7 chances. You get one, and if you fail, people die. Remember that feeling. Remember how hard it was to find peace. Remember that it's always easier to start a war than to prevent one. The lesson stuck. The students began to change their thinking. They stopped seeing military power as the primary tool and started seeing it as the last resort. Near the end of the first year, a Chitter student named Vex approached Yuna after class. His insect features made his emotions hard to read, but his voice sounded troubled. Instructor, may I ask a question? Of course, Yuna replied. Why do humans show battlefield footage to children? I've seen your educational system. Your children learn about wars when they're very young. Isn't that